You're listening to Bros Let's Talk.
Hey, it's Bros Let's Talk. Pat here with Jimmy and Andy. How was the long Thanksgiving weekend, gentlemen?
Gluttonous.
Good
It
word.
was good.
Good word.
Thank you.
And it was quick, but it was
See,
much
I
needed.
feel like mine went kind of long. Yesterday was kind of a weird day because there was multiple times where I felt like it was Sunday and I was like, oh my gosh, this sucks. Got to go back to work tomorrow. But then it was Saturday. So then I would get back and I got a whole nother day and then another day. So I kept thinking it was Sunday, but it was Saturday. Now it's actually Sunday.
Are you
I got
back
into
in
that.
your office?
I am back in the office. So that sucks.
I got
Whatever.
old man mentality where I actually kind of got bored with all the time that I had. And that doesn't help.
Really?
Everything's all quarantined and COVID-y and everything. But yeah, yesterday, Lena and I were just sitting around and it was just like, so what do we do now?
Yeah,
So-
I mean, I kind of feel that actually. I watched 2 rom-coms with Alyssa yesterday, just because I didn't know what else to do.
Right.
There was nothing else to do. She just wanted to lay around and watch movies. So I was like, whatever.
I was working around the house. One of our loyal listeners and former softball team members, Lloyd Lindgren, was here pimping out my basement,
Nice.
hooking me up with some Cat 6 cable for my internet downstairs and
Nice.
making my TV all pretty. So, but of course, fucking Xfinity rears its ugly head. So we're using Alex's room as a midpoint. So I had an old modem down here that we're going to hook up internet and cable to and then run it to the TV. But of course, if you are using Comcast and you have 2 modems, one of them has to be rented from Xfinity. So I have to go and rent a modem from them today in order to finish up the hookup of my basement, which is fine.
To be fair,
Yeah.
their modems are a lot better than,
They are pretty good.
That's what I hear.
yeah.
My modem's solid.
Worth the money.
Yeah, I'm gonna go do that afterward.
That's always fun.
Yes. Pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Jimmy actually came over Friday and helped with some stuff around here. So yesterday I planned on doing stuff like putting up the Christmas decorations and all that. But I did so much shit on Friday that
did a ton on Friday.
Took almost 20,000 steps on Friday just doing work
Damn.
around the house. And I was so tired. Plus Mia and Alex slept over and Mia she takes up some space in the bed. I'll just say
She
that.
sure does.
We slept down here, so Alyssa had all her own space in our bed, and I still had 2 feet of space. So I slept good last night. That's why I passed out early
Good.
Nice.
I'm glad.
and missed the fight between. Well, I wasn't gonna watch it anyway, but Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Name I don't know why I blanked out his name for a second, but I got it. They fought, and the undercard was Nate Robinson, former NBA player, versus Jake Paul, annoying YouTuber, and the outcome probably could not have been any worse.
No.
Nate Robinson got knocked out cold in the second round, and
That fight should have been stopped after his second knockdown. Personally.
Yeah. He was stumbling all over the ring right
Yes.
before he got knocked out.
Yes. And best thing about the night was Snoop Dogg doing
Oh,
commentary.
1,000%.
And Nate gets knocked out in here. Oh Lord.
He's singing before.
they have to get Snoop on mainstream sports broadcasts in some capacity.
For sure.
At least
For
football or something, because that was hilarious. But
Poor
definitely,
Nate took one of those Wile E. Coyote dives where he hit the ground, his butt was still in the air for
Oh,
half
my
a
gosh.
second, and then he kind of
memes
flattened and
for days.
Yeah.
oh, man.
My favorite thing was, I think it was Chaps from Barstool said, "How long can until Nate Robinson checks his mentions?" And some guy commented, he goes, "Never. He's got to change his name to Rob Nathanson and move to Venezuela." Oh, so good. And it's true.
Holy shit.
I mean, pretty much every prominent Black sports media person I follow on Twitter was asking questions along the line of, can Nate Robinson show his face at a barbecue again? When can Nate Robinson show his face in the hood?
Right.
All this stuff. And all the polls were just out
Dude,
huge disparages between
Oh my god.
never and yes. It was like, yeah, you're dead, dude.
My
Jake
my
Paul.
other favorite one was Nick Young was posted on his Instagram story, and he's like all pumped up, like, let's go, Nate, do it for the league, do it for the league. And then at the end, it's just a cutaway, and his next story is Nate laying on the ground. He's like, oh, just stay down there, Nate.
Well, that was the thing. He posted on Twitter and probably all of his social media beforehand that this fight was for all of his NBA brothers and all of the, he dedicated it to all of these, and then basically got his ass beat by a privileged white kid who made his way on YouTube being an idiot. To your point, Jim, all they do is train, but still not a good look. I mean, he is 5'9", but he is a professional athlete.
I mean, that dude is an athletic
athlete
freak.
for sure, but
This is
being
also
an
Jake
athlete,
Paul's third
fight.
big fight.
This is his first professional
Right.
fight. So they're both considered professional fighters now, which is kind of crazy. But now I would like to see Jake Paul maybe fight somebody who, I mean, not to say that I thought this was going to be the outcome, but maybe someone with a little bit more training.
Yeah, sure.
See what he's really got.
Yeah.
But he'll never do that because
the Tyson,
even though he said he wants
bullshit.
Yes, there was no way that was a draw. There was no way that was a draw.
The numbers are crazy. Tyson outlanded like punches by like 30 plus and power punches by.
He could have literally killed Roy Jones Jr. if he went for his head with a full swing.
Yeah.
Like, Roy Jones Jr. did not belong there at all.
He wanted no part of that. He wanted that $1 million and wanted to survive.
They both looked old, but there's no way that, like, I saw somebody tweet about it. There had to be something in the contract that said he couldn't, like, go full out.
Go for the kill.
Yeah. Because, I mean, if you saw any highlights of that fight or watched the whole thing, like, he had multiple opportunities to just swing right for his head, and Roy Jones Jr. wasn't going to do anything about it. He might have actually died.
Well, something came out ahead of, and maybe it was even before yesterday, but I saw it yesterday that in the contract there were to be no knockouts, any cuts or serious injuries was an automatic draw to the match. Like, this was more designed as like a charity event than a real boxing event, just to kind of draw numbers, I guess. But yeah, this wasn't like a serious bout. Like Tyson was going in there looking for a knockout because it's just weird. It's
kind of bullshit because they marketed it as that.
Tyson making his comeback and yeah, when I saw that, I was kind of on the fence if I wanted to try and figure out how to watch it. And then when I saw that, I was basically out.
Nah.
I was like, I don't really care then if Tyson's not going to be knocking him out. That is why most people would have tuned into that fight.
Oh gosh, could you imagine
one more
Tyson
chance
knock someone out at 50 years old?
Would have been
and
awesome.
They both looked like shit.
Yes, but Tyson looked like less shit.
Yes.
It was like solid dump. And Roy Jones Jr. was diarrhea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good analogy.
All right, we're gonna jump. Thanks. We're gonna jump in. Very excited. It's Mando Monday.
It's just another Mando Monday. I wish it were every day.
It's been 2 weeks actually since we've Mando Monday. We didn't have an episode last week because I just had so much stuff happening in my house. It's out of control. And it's almost done. Now it's up to me. It's in my court. I just have to finish sanding and mudding and stuff. The drywall, and I'm just lazy.
And Pat's about to be a baby daddy.
That's true. But so I gotta get it done because Christmas, all that stuff's coming up. But it's Mando Monday. We've had 2 episodes since we last won.
2 real good episodes.
I thought last week was fun, but not a great episode. Here's my recap of last week's episode. Directed by Carl Weathers. And if you didn't know, you would have known because he was in all the scenes. And I'm sorry, this might just be a personal bias, but I cannot take Carl Weathers seriously because of Arrested Development.
100%.
Where he plays just this, like, he gives Tobias acting classes and knows nothing about acting and is just the cheapest dude in the world. I'll never forget the one scene where he's talking about saving chicken wing bones because you can throw them in and make a nice stew with it. So that'll always stick in my head when I hear Carl Weathers.
I'm going to try that.
It was a fun episode, but this week's episode, episode 13, The Jedi, was my favorite episode of the season, possibly the series so far.
15 seconds in, and I was hooked.
Yeah, it was just right.
It was definitely my favorite of the entire series.
Yeah,
Mine
that's
too.
what I'm thinking too. So we finally had the live action debut of Ahsoka Tano, played by Rosario Dawson, as
who killed it, by the way,
which was the worst kept secret in the world, was that she was going to be Ahsoka Tano, but she was
still,
awesome.
but still lived up to the hype.
She was perfect.
Looked identical.
Awesome.
Yes.
Biggest point with this was it was written and directed by Dave Filoni, who obviously Ahsoka came to life in his Clone Wars and Rebels series. And that's where she has become a fan favorite in the Star Wars universe amongst fans. And it was honestly it was huge shoes to fill because of, especially for the hardcore fans. And I mean, Rosario Dawson's awesome in pretty much everything she's in. So I had no doubt she was going to kill it. But I guess quick recap of the episode. 2 episodes ago, Bo-Katan told Mando that he would find Ahsoka Tano on the planet Corvus. We start the episode on that planet, and she's just single-handedly taken out an entire fleet, basically, of clone army warrior soldiers, whatever they're called. And then basically she's confronted with, what was the lady's name? I've got it pulled up here. I didn't write stuff down this time, and I knew that was going to come back to bite me.
Remember her name?
Morgan. Wasn't it Morgan?
Yeah. Yes. Morgan Elsbeth.
Yes.
The magistrate of Caledon. And basically you get the sense that this place is, it's kind of like under supreme order, and the citizens are slaves and they're not allowed to talk to anybody. And Mando lands on this place and goes into town trying to find Ahsoka, is what he's there for. And then upon being let in, he's taken to the magistrate, and she basically puts a bounty on Ahsoka and asks Mando to go kill Ahsoka for in return for a sphere made of the same material as Mando's armor. So he goes and seeks out Ahsoka, takes the mission, and then obviously he's got ulterior motives. He's trying to pair, who we now have a name for, Grogu, which is Baby Yoda's name, which is
still on the fence about it.
It's whatever, but it's
fine.
Grogu. That's his name. That's what we'll refer to him as from here on out, or I will at least. And basically they confront each other. They almost battle, and then he shows her, and then that's how you find out his name. They communicate through the Force. Mando asks her to train Grogu. She says basically she denies it because of his connection to Mando, and how she's seen how that connection can tear a Jedi apart, referring to Anakin, who Ahsoka is Anakin's Padawan, for those of you who maybe didn't know. And essentially he agrees to help take down the magistrate, and Ahsoka says she'll train him if he does it. So they take him out. There's a pretty sick fight scene between Ahsoka and the magistrate, and just the whole action sequences in this were phenomenal. And in the end, she basically tells him that she can't do it, but she sends him off to another place where he can kind of seek other Jedi, and that's where we're left off. Everything about the episode is great, though. Hopefully, this isn't a one-off. What are your guys' thoughts? Obviously, I think we're all in agreement. It was great, but.
So my first, did you know that Lang, that was her hired help? That was, what was the lady's name? Morgan, whatever. Her hired security was Michael Ben, and he was the guy that played Kyle Reese in Terminator.
Oh, really?
The guy that Mando kills.
I thought that guy looked familiar.
Yeah, he played Kyle Reese in Terminator, so that was a cool little caveat. To start, Pat, I think that the fact that this episode was, what's his name, Dave Filoni, who directed
Dave Filoni.
Dave
Filoni, and he created Clone Wars
and
Rebels,
Rebels,
showing you how Mandalorian is doing this right. They're going to bring this live action character, or this character, to life, and they want to do it correctly. So why not bring in the person who essentially not created her, but brought her to life in the cartoon version? I just think it's such a good job by Jon Favreau or whoever thought of that. I mean, that's
Well, Dave
it's doing
Filoni's been
something right.
like he's a producer on The Mandalorian as well, so I'm pretty sure he's involved.
He's the
Oh, good.
puppeteer.
Yeah, he's involved
He
with
is, really?
everything. And he's kind of the brainchild behind the Star Wars universe.
Big
We
time,
kind of
big
talked
time.
about this 2 weeks ago. He's basically the historian of the Star Wars universe. He knows
Gotcha.
everything, and he was a huge fan growing up, and that's how he kind of worked his way into the opportunity just through fandom. He was into making movies and stuff too, but that's how he got in with George Lucas.
He's a super fan, and like he knows everything about the universe. So
Yeah.
he's the one that plants all the Easter eggs, makes sure that the stories
Gotcha.
cross together.
Gotcha.
Like,
That's a pretty
seamlessly.
sweet job.
Yeah, I mean, Favreau has his name, and he's obviously responsible for putting everything together. But Filoni is the brains behind everything.
Gotcha.
As far as it goes for Star Wars purposes, like I'm
Mhm.
sure Favreau has a lot of say in how everything's directed and how everything looks and things like that as far as film.
Yeah.
But Filoni is the brainchild for the Star Wars universe piece of it.
Side note: have you guys watched the making of Mandalorian yet? They have that show.
From the
that
first season?
I watched the first season. I haven't watched any of the new ones.
Okay,
I
yeah,
didn't
I
know
haven't
there
seen
were
it.
new ones.
I haven't seen
Are,
any
are
of
there
it
new
yet.
ones? Okay. Oh,
I don't know. I
yeah,
haven't
I've
seen any of it yet.
yeah,
I want to
it's really
start
good.
watching it. It
Yeah,
looks
it's
super
pretty
good.
cool.
I had no idea that. I mean, I knew that he was like a puppet, but I didn't know that they have someone actually doing Grogu,
Yeah.
like as an actual.
Oh yeah. Well, it's
so
a mix
cool.
of like animatronic.
Oh,
puppet
I
and-
don't. Did you misunderstand that? Like puppeteer was a.
No. I
yeah, I thought you meant
got
that.
you. No.
Okay.
No,
I
they
gotcha.
actually have a physical like animatronic puppet that they use, and then they also do like a little bit of CGI, I think, but
Right.
minimal. That's
Yeah,
what's
very
cool
minimal.
about this is like a lot of the stuff is actually filmed.
So yeah, sorry, I got way off task, but I thought it was just a perfect episode. Like I said, 15 seconds in, and you're hooked. Like I was expecting, she comes at the end of an episode, and then maybe in the next one, it was like boom, right off the bat. Here she is, just kicking ass and taking names.
And I think it had to be like that, to be honest, because they ended the one episode with name dropping her, and
Yes.
then they went a full episode with nothing. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, just get to Ahsoka already. We want to see her. So I thought it was awesome that she's kicking ass right off the bat like that.
Right.
Agreed.
And
I thought it was dark. I thought it was
yeah.
Mhm.
gritty, just full of action. And Ahsoka, you can tell, is like kind of grown into. It's obviously been multiple years since you've seen her in Clone Wars and stuff like that. So she's an adult now, and you can tell that she's kind of been by herself for a long time, where she's just kind of kicking ass and taking names. I loved every part of the episode, and I think they really needed an episode like this, because I think this second season I've gotten a little tired of the
Formula.
Yeah, and especially this season, it's the exact same thing every
Episode. Yeah.
I need something. Okay, I'll give
Yeah.
it to you, but you do something for me first.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay.
And I get that he's a taskmaster and he's hired help. That's kind of what his job is. But as far as the show goes, you need to change something up with that.
Yeah.
And I'm glad. I mean, the formula was still there here.
Right. Definitely.
Right.
He goes and asks for help, but you get the big reveal of Ahsoka, and I'm excited to see where it goes. We were kind of talking on the side, like, what are they going to do with Ahsoka? Because I'm with you, Pat. That's way too big of a name, and
For
way
one
character.
episode appearance.
way
Yeah.
too big of a character as well in the Star Wars. I mean, it's become the part of the Star Wars universe with Clone Wars, but
Right.
way too big of a character to just drop in for one episode where he's been seeking her out for so long and then just completely do away with her.
Yeah.
Right. I think if they were going to go that route, it would have just been some kind of no-name actress rather than
Agreed.
Rosario Dawson.
Yep.
I think they're setting up a spin-off series, and I think they introduced that. I did some research on the topic, obviously, but she has an ulterior motive, which we find out at the end, when she's trying to find the magistrate. She's trying to find the magistrate because she's trying to track down Admiral Thrawn, which I guess was the main villain in the Star Wars Rebels series, which was like kind of a follow-up to Clone Wars, or when Ahsoka's a little bit older. And what he's the main villain of the whole series, and supposedly a really good villain as well. So again, just the combination of the impact of the character, the celebrity or the actress that they chose to portray her, and then kind of an introduction of, again, another villain that means something to people who love Star Wars. And and I talked to you guys as well about there's a quote from when season 1 did so well. Bob Iger, who's the CEO of Disney, basically said that the point of the Mandalorian is going to be looking to introduce other characters and explore potential spinoffs, is basically what he said. So if not Ahsoka Tano, then who would they choose to spin off a show with? But hopefully we get more of her in this series, because I thought that the relationship that her and Mando kind of developed throughout the episode was Mando kind of seems to be able to do that with anybody, but they both, I think the both of them especially, really care about the well-being of Grogu. And to your point, Andy, about the formula, I think this might have been the introduction to where this series is finally going to go and break away from the formula by having, Mando have to kind of decide between his work and kind of parenting Grogu, because she mentioned he kind of looks at you like a father figure. Mando's already kind of breaking the way of the Mandalorian with some of the things he's doing to get, or has in the past. And I feel like he's going to come at a crossroads at a certain point to where it's like, I either have to like get rid of him or
How long of a staying power do you think this show has?
That's what I'm starting to wonder.
Because I just sort of had this thought as you were saying that if they do decide to spin off, do they cut Mando and then focus on the next spin-off show? Because for me, thinking about this show, it's as much about Grogu as it is about Mando. Because he's a mainstay, and it gives the lightheartedness and cuteness to this show, where if it was just him walking around like
murdering people,
dark and there's not much to that.
It would be cool, but it wouldn't have the same touch.
Right. And you
knew maybe 4 seasons.
You knew it wasn't going to happen, like this episode where they were going to split.
Right.
But there has to come a point where, they do, or they kind of go off into infinity and live happily ever after.
Right.
So I don't know how long this show truly has. And I think that might be a good way to do it, is if you create a spinoff, have 1 year of overlap with the two of them, close one off, and then kind of continue on the other.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That is a really cool way to kind of do
Yeah.
long-winded, interconnected storylines without having to worry about one storyline getting stale. Mm-hmm. I think 4 seasons is probably max for something like this.
Yeah.
Just because, like you said, Grogu has become such a big part of the show that, I mean, they have to do. They're already signed on for 3rd, so we know we're getting that for sure.
Oh, I didn't know that yet. That's good.
So, and obviously we're reaching a point of his storyline where we're basically about to find out shortly here in a few episodes if he's going to become a full-fledged Jedi or not. And then with that, it's where do you go with it? Does he use that training to help Mando, or is that with the ending point? Maybe that's going to be a full season thing of trying to get to wherever.
I would assume it would be. We also now know that his ship is being tracked, and that Moff Gideon wants to get Grogu for those experiments, which we were introduced to, but not really dove too much into. So they still definitely have a good amount of story to tell. But aside from episode 2 this year, they don't really have filler episodes, so they better have a pretty decent amount of story to tell. So I was talking with Lloyd about this yesterday. He doesn't think that we're really going to dive into Moff Gideon this year. Like, we're going to see more of him, but we're really going to see him next year. like full blown on next year.
Well, and if that's the case, like he's kind of built up to be the main villain, but you know
Yeah.
that Bo-Katan is going to come back too.
Yes.
She was looking for him.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you know that character is going to circle back, and who knows if like if they end up having to fight him, if Mando kind of calls back on the people that have helped him, what's his face in the
Timothy Olyphant in the first one.
Yeah.
Because that was another big name actor that
Right.
Yes, that you're not expecting to just see in
for
one episode.
Who knows though? I don't know what the route is here.
I don't either.
I think-
Which could be a good thing.
Well, here's the thing though, is that could make sense, but we're also now the plot points are set up, like you said, Jim, we know what Moff Gideon wants. They want Grogu's blood so they can essentially create an army of whatever those clone, those
Jedi.
whatever Jedi clone soldiers.
Mhm.
He's got a tracking beacon on his ship, which means Moff Gideon can track him. They're going to take Grogu to this place to seek Jedi. I mean, they're probably going to be a confrontation on this planet as he gets there because they're tracking him. And then that's probably going to be the last episode with a big battle scene where, like you said, Ahsoka and all these other people who showed up will come to help Mando. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I was just going to mention how Moff Gideon has kind of almost cemented himself as this badass Star Wars villain with like maybe 11 minutes of screen time.
Yeah,
in
next
2
to no
seasons.
screen time.
And Giancarlo Esposito is a great actor, so it's
And he's a phenomenal villain.
he's one of the best villains out there. I mean, it's just who he is at this point. And what's funny, because just from pure like aesthetic look, he doesn't look like someone you would assume a villain, but he's so good at playing the part.
It's just the stoic nature of his acting.
Exactly. So I'm excited for him to get more involved, honestly, because it'll be trouble for Mando, but from everything I've seen him in, it's always good for the show.
It's just such an interesting concept for a show that there have been no, other than maybe Carl Weathers and the UFC fighter, I can't remember her name.
Gina
Carano.
Carano,
Yeah.
yeah.
There are no real mainstay side characters, and that's not really normal for a TV show where you kind of build up character development for other people outside of one person. Like obviously Grogu doesn't have any character development. He can't speak.
Right.
So it's just Mando every single episode. So that's the only reason why I think this can't last very long. Unless you
That makes sense.
branching out, but it doesn't seem like that's the.
I'm thinking, what if this is like you said, this series, the whole point of this, like Bob Iger said, and like the stuff we've been talking about, the whole point of this series is maybe to just launch a ton of spin-offs using mainstay characters that people know. So it would just be awesome to see over, however 3 or 4 seasons, however many they do, them just introduce these big characters to the Star Wars universe. And then from The Mandalorian spawns like 3 or 4 other series that are all awesome.
Well,
There's time for character development and stuff like that. But
that's what Arrow did for the CW. They have the Arrowverse, which led to Flash, which led to Supergirl. There's like 2 or 3 other shows. And then basically that's what Iron Man did for the Avengers. Like that kicked everything off. And like you said, they're very big on formula.
Even with those ones though, like those shows and the Iron Man movies have a lot of character development about that individual character that they could stand as one-offs without all that other stuff, to where, like Andy said, there's like Mando's basically you're just seeing what a bounty hunter does. And I don't know the staying power of that, especially like at a certain point, you'd almost have to let Grogu go and then maybe have a season where it's just brutalized of him just destroying people and then end it. I don't know.
That would be interesting.
But I do don't get me wrong, I love The Mandalorian. I'm so excited every Friday to watch it. But I mentioned early on this season that the formula was like very apparent, that they're just on the same formula every episode. And that's something like that does worry me about the staying power of a show when they're just following the same formula every week.
Yeah.
As exciting as it is and as awesome as it is. But this week got me more excited than I've been since the show started.
For sure.
Awesome. I'm going to watch it again today. It was so good. Oh, it was so good.
So good.
I'm going to watch it today because tonight the Bears and Packers play after Bears bye week. Took some time off talking about the Bears, which was good for the soul.
Great for the soul.
And now we have to wait all day to probably get embarrassed on national TV, but it could be different. Mitch is back. Foles is still hurt, so Mitch is returning to start. And I think this is a move that Bears fans were ready for anyway, just because
Foles is a statue in the pocket.
Foles' a statue
Can't move.
was not an improvement from what
No.
Mitch had been this year.
No.
And they played really bad. They lost 5 games in a row.
4
games in a row. Probably going to be 5, but they
Probably
lost
gonna be
4
5.
games in a row and played very poorly. I saw an interesting stat though that this could be a really interesting opportunity for Mitch, because in the 3 games he started, the defenses they played against were in the mid 20s to low 20s, and then in the 5 games Foles started, it was like 1, 3, 5, 8, and 12. He played some really tough defenses too.
Yeah.
And then now Mitch comes in, and the back half of the Bears schedule is all like middling defenses again. So
Right.
I told Jimmy this the other day. I am like almost as checked out on the season as you can be. If they lose this game, I'm not going to watch anymore, especially if it's how I think they're going to lose the game.
They have to watch next week when they play the Lions. They just fired everybody.
But that might jack that team up, and they'll come out and get a win because they hated playing for Patricia. There's always something that could go wrong for the Bears.
I had a really quick,
Go ahead.
a weird forgetfulness moment where I didn't really stay on social media much yesterday. And I kind of saw like 6 hours later that they fired everybody. The Lions, I should say.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like what a power move, firing everybody on a Saturday right before a Sunday game. Like, it's like I just completely blanked that they played on Thursday.
I was surprised
but
I was surprised he wasn't fired Thursday night because they got their asses kicked on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And
By a
they've
bad
been playing
Houston team.
terribly.
Mhm.
But-
Bad Houston team.
Back to what I was saying, I'm basically as out on the Bears as one can be without actually being off the bus. The only thing that could reel me back in for this season is probably Mitch getting his starting job back, coming back and leading the Bears to the playoffs.
And just
If
going
they play
ape.
well. If they play well while doing so. If they're just coming out in these ugly 17-14 wins and just gutting it out, getting wins, like I still am not going to be on board because that's no way to win in the playoffs. But I've said this a million times. I like Mitch, the guy. I don't really think he's a great quarterback, but I think it would be cool to see. I'm not getting my hopes up, but it's literally the only thing that my Bears fandom is clinging to right now for watching games this season is Mitch putting the team on his back. How sad
it's so great. It's so crazy because both of them have been so mediocre.
So mediocre.
Probably the lower end of mediocre.
Mediocre's being nice.
Yeah.
Especially to Foles.
But it's 2 different pieces where Mitch was missing a lot of throws.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel like Foles was missing as many throws, but he also couldn't create and extend a play because of poor offensive line. So
True.
You get the mobility of Mitch back to where he can, step up in the pocket, roll out, and it might be a bad throw coming after that, but
Most likely.
you're not getting bulldozed in the middle of the pocket
On 3rd and 7,
Right.
trying to throw up a shitty ball to the middle of the field while you're getting tackled. So
Right.
I think Mitch gives them, at least from what we've seen, like everybody at the beginning when we moved over to Nick Foles was, all right, like we are getting a better quarterback. That obviously wasn't the case. And Pat, you mentioned that they were playing better defenses, and that's fine. But I'm excited to see what Mitch does, especially for Matt Nagy's purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if he comes in and succeeds, then you kind of know that it was Nick Foles just being pretty bad.
Yeah.
If he comes in and it's the exact same offense, maybe he extends an extra play or two that Foles wasn't able to. Nagy's got to go.
Yeah.
And it's that playbook. It's the play calling. It's not even Nagy's play calling, but like just the playbook itself needs to go somewhere. Like that whole offensive side of the ball has the wrong mindset of how to run a football game. So I don't think they win tonight. I think he certainly gives them a better chance to win than Foles. Just from that reason, like your offensive line is so bad that you need the ability to extend a play. And Foles looked like he had cinder blocks attached to his feet.
I mean, I can't even believe he's a professional athlete watching him try and navigate out on the field. It makes my brain won't accept it. It makes no sense. How are you in the NFL when you
2 weeks ago
run? Like
there were plays where he did get outside of the pocket and had maybe 10 yards in front of him, and he decided to force a ball throwing across his body instead of take off and get 8 yards.
But we also saw those 10 yards got closed on him real quick.
Oh, yeah.
And to your point, Andy, I think the offensive line is definitely the weak point for the Bears.
Sure.
But I think like the things we heard about Foles was his ability to read defenses and his ability to kind of like call audibles and just a smarter quarterback. And the last time we saw him play against Minnesota, Mike Zimmer was dominating Nick Foles.
Yep.
Nick Foles
and Minnesota is a bad defense. They're not the Minnesota we knew.
Personnel-wise, they're bad this year. But they still do have guys like Harrison Smith, who's one of the best safeties in the league. And Mike Zimmer is a great defensive mind. And he was putting Nick Foles' mind in pretzels that day. And to the point of the offensive line, Foles he's basically got he's scared now. So he's forcing throws because he thinks there's going to be pressure closing on him when there's certain plays where maybe it's not there, but he's throwing it earlier. He's throwing it off because he feels like the pressure's going to be there. And when you're scared in the pocket, you're no good to anybody because, to your point, he's supposed to be hitting on these throws that Mitch misses, and Foles himself has missed on a lot of throws and had a lot of bad throws. And sure, there's plays where guys like Anthony Miller, he might get a hand on it, but then you look back at the replay and it's like he's jumping as high as he can and reaching, but it's like he's got to put some of these throws on the money.
Right.
Even if he gives the guys an opportunity to catch it, he was going to get Allen Robinson killed if he kept playing. He just kept leading him into hits in the middle of the field. So it was just, you didn't get what you were hoping you would get out of Nick Foles. And you knew that was a possibility because he's been in the league for 10 years. It's not like he's some spring chicken. But I didn't think he was as slow and immobile as he is.
I didn't either.
And playing behind this, cheese grater offensive line, I mean, you got to have someone who can move. So to your point, Mitch might not be a better quarterback than Foles, but he's a better fit for the personnel the Bears have. And that, with Nagy again, that's one really huge complaint that I've had of him his entire tenure as the Bears coach is he refuses to fit his scheme to his personnel. Refuses to do it. It's almost to the point now where he might get himself fired because he refuses to fit his scheme to the players that he has on his roster.
So, Anders, question for you. I know you're not super thrilled with the Packers. And I mean, they're obviously ahead in the NFC North. They're a top, 3 or 4 team in the NFC, but you have been very critical of them. And I think rightfully so. You're not being unfair. What would each team have to do to win tonight?
The only thing that the Bears have to do is create turnovers because that is the only reason that the Packers have lost is when they've shot themselves in the foot. And I don't even think that the Packers, when they've lost, it's not like the other defense has played well. It is quite literally they are causing turnovers for themselves. It's not like the defense is jumping on a ball, like punching out footballs, like making great defensive plays. It's the interceptions that Rodgers has thrown have been either poor wide receiver play or like just flat out bad throws. So if the Bears are able to create turnovers and the Packers are kind of, again, trying to shoot themselves in the foot, I think the Bears have a good shot. But we've talked about this, how Rodgers is so prone to not making those mistakes.
Right. Especially after games when he does.
Right. And I think that's going to be the key that they've kind of driven home this past week, because against Indianapolis, like that game was won. And
Yeah.
they had multiple times to win it, even when the game got close again. And they killed themselves. So I don't think they're gonna make their own mistakes.
Yeah.
But the Bears defense is so good that they can jump on those and actually create turnovers of their own, not just by
Yeah, I was gonna say, if the Bears get any turnovers this game, it'll probably be the strip sack form more so than interceptions. Just because even the last couple of years when the Bears have had chance to pick Rodgers off,
They don't.
Fuller drops it. Like Eddie Jackson has a pick against Rodgers and it was off a tip from a receiver in 2018 in a game that was already in hand. So
right.
like Rodgers in his career has a way of just avoiding interception. He's a smart player with the ball, but like very rarely does he get tricked. I think the one last week, the one receiver played like a dummy coverage and then bounced back. And like, that was the only, I feel like I can't ever recall, at least in recent memory, Rodgers kind of getting tricked by a defender like that. So it's very rare. And I think you're right. The Bears defense is still good, like top third of the league good, but it hasn't been opportunistic in creating turnovers like it did in 2018, each of the last 2 years. And that's why this team is in the place that it is, because I think a lot of us Bears fans took for granted, for one, how often the defense was scoring, and for two, how great of field position they were providing for the offense to come out. And then three, giving the offense leads. So they didn't have to come out and feel all this pressure to come out and score because they were coming out up 7-0 because we got a pick six on the first drive of the game. So
right.
Yeah, I think the big key is the turnovers. That'll give them a good chance to at least keep the game close. The other thing is the offense needs to stay on the field.
So Andy, you watch like the Packers game every week, basically, and you know the Bears personnel pretty well. Where should the Bears try to be focusing their offensive game plan to take advantage of the weaknesses on the Packers defense?
Run right up the middle.
Just run it.
Oh my God.
And here's the thing. When Mitch was go ahead.
Pettin plays a nickel and dime defense every single down until he starts getting beat. And he refuses to load the box until he starts getting beat on the ground. And that's what the good teams have done against them. That's why San Francisco ran for 300 yards in the NFC Championship game, is because he believes that the NFL is a passing league. And to an extent it is, but he believes that it's a passing league. And if you get beat on the ground, then you get beat on the ground. But the good running teams are going to kick your ass on the ground. They're not just going to run on you and kind of, make like a 30, 40-yard drive. And then once you force them into a 3rd and long, then they're going to punt. Like the good teams are going to run it down your throat and get first downs just by running it down your throat. So Pettin, and that's what's been so frustrating, is they have a good pass rush, but they go 4 down linemen or 3 down linemen and then have 1 middle linebacker in the field or maybe 2. And teams that's not how you stop the run at all.
Right.
That's the only way that teams have beaten them is by establishing the run, getting 5 yards a carry. And then finally you have to break your mold of your base defense by bringing a safety up into the box. And then that's when they beat you, is they
could throw it over the top. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. It's Pettin's very frustrating. And especially now they're not the 2010, 2011 Packers where they're putting up 45, 50 points a game.
Yeah.
They still have a great offense, but they're not
right
to where, okay, every team now has to pass the ball in order to catch up. They're playing a little tighter games to where they're not jumping out to 30-point leads and then having to get passed on. I mean, 2011, when they went 15-1, they had the worst pass defense in the history of the NFL, and it's because that they were up 20.
Yeah, they're always up
on everyone, and then they just dinked and donked all the way down the field, and they had the worst pass defense in the history of the NFL.
That's crazy.
That's wild.
See,
So the
thing-
Bears need to be able to run the ball, which they have shown that they cannot do.
They
Well,
can't.
and that's what I hope they should try to get back to doing, because when they started off, even though we all kind of knew they were frauds, the first 3 games of the season when Mitch started, the Bears were running the ball better than they had last year, or basically any other point in Nagy's tenure as Bears head coach. And then they basically just got away from that when Foles became the starter. And it was because of opponent and circumstance in certain instances, but offensive line injuries obviously don't help. But when you look at it at the base, you have all these injuries on your offensive line. Okay. You've got at certain points, you've got 3 to 4 starters out. So you're just putting guys back there, and certain guys haven't played positions before that they're playing in NFL football games. It's already hard enough to be a lineman, and now you have to introduce pass protection schemes into the mix. My thought this whole time is they should have been doing a more run focused attack, and now
pass blocking is so much more.
Run blocking is literally just go out and run forward and try and block the guy in front of you. And there's certain things you have to look out for, but it's more straightforward, literally. And now you talk about Mike Pettine's defenses. Well, Mitch hasn't played well against Packers defense in his career, and it's because there's more DBs out on the field. It's hard. You have to try and read the coverages. It's more confusing. Right. So my thought going into this week was that the Bears should really do a more run-focused game plan. Is Montgomery playing, Jim?
I believe so. Yeah.
So Montgomery's back. So. There you go. Have a more run-focused game plan. Have some design QB runs in there. Move the pocket with Mitch. Like, really, the offense has been so stationary with Foles back there the last few weeks. I really think you got to kind of pull out all the stops and put a lot of motion in there, and don't make it easy by letting Mitch go out there and throw it. Who was the guy in the Packers last year that said basically you just got to let Mitch, like, make Mitch play quarterback and we'll win? Like that, I'm sure they still feel that way. So don't fall into that trap. That's all I'm asking.
I hope Mitch just goes out there and is like, fuck it. This could be my last 6 starts in this league. I'm going to go do my
Well, that's
thing.
the thing. This is Mitch's audition for the NFL, not just the Bears. This is, and probably his tenure with the Bears might be done anyway, but this is his audition for the rest of the league to prove that he can still be a quarterback.
So, Pat, here's what's probably going to happen. There's probably going to be COVID game cancellations, which will trigger the clause that the NFL expands to 8 teams, and by default, the Bears will make the playoffs and then do nothing this offseason to try and fix their problems.
That'll suck. I'll be so pissed. They'll make the playoffs. They'll lose their playoff game 10-7, and then they'll be like, "Well, we made the playoffs, and we showed." And the team that they'll lose to will end up winning the Super Bowl. So it'll be like, well, we lost by 3 points to the eventual Super Bowl champion. And we have a kicker now. So if we ever get in that situation, it's just.
So how would that work? Would then no team get a bye?
I guess not.
Right. And it'd just be.
Because it's an even number of teams then. Because right now it's just the 1 seeds get by now.
Correct.
New format. Yeah, this whole thing is so weird because it feels like the league tried to bend over backwards for the Steelers, and now the Broncos have no quarterbacks.
No quarterback.
Just like, screw you, you're playing.
And they made San Francisco a couple of weeks ago go out there with fucking practice squad. Like,
and now San Fran. Well, I guess the Niners can't practice.
They can't play in their stadium,
right?
And they have 2 home games in the next 3 weeks.
What is it, Santa Clara County?
Yeah,
they're allowing.
They're allowing.
So they're going to end up being back in San Francisco, or playing in Oakland
or Arizona. They said they might play their games there too. So this whole thing is starting to get pretty wild again.
I mean, to what you said, it is wild that they are basically bending over backwards to try and get this Steelers game pushed. Yeah, and then other teams are just kind of throwing up their hands like, what the shit, like.
Imagine if Patrick Mahomes caught COVID. What do you think they would do? They would do everything in their power they'd play that game on a Wednesday. They would They would move mountains. But Denver's like, hey, you suck, whatever.
Now I guess more
an automatic win.
More teams are starting to. I guess the Bills have been. They've been isolating Jake Fromm from the rest of the team.
Oh, just in case.
Just in case of a situation like this, and people were kind of making fun of them. And I think who was
it? Such a bad idea now.
Matt LaFleur actually in the offseason brought up this concern that he had thought about quarantining one of his quarterbacks just in case something like this happened. And people again kind of made fun of him. And now here we are.
That's
like the Broncos
wild.
they called up a practice squad receiver who played quarterback in college for 3 years. So otherwise it was Royce Freeman, the running back, was going to be their start. He was the emergency quarterback on the roster.
Just run Wildcat the whole time.
Is there even a line? Like, can you bet that game or they take it off?
That's a good question because it's
I don't
against
know.
the Saints too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And everyone's joking like Taysom, like the perfect quarterback for the Broncos would be Taysom Hill.
Yeah, right.
Crazy.
I mean, that also, then I'd be pissed if I'm Tampa Bay, if I'm anyone in the NFL. Well, I guess not really Carolina or Atlanta, but if you're Tampa Bay and you're within a game and you're watching the team that's ahead of you go play a team without an actual starting quarterback who you've lost to twice already, that sucks.
Just
But
dragging
the
him over.
NFL is pinning their ears back and they're going to finish this season come hell or high water. And if you're in its way,
well, it's
sorry
just
about
so
you.
weird though, because literally in the same week they're bending over backwards for one team. It just it's not a good look in my opinion.
Yeah, I
Just
agree.
the fact, and I saw that the Broncos reached out and requested that they basically postpone or try and reschedule the game, and the league said no.
Right.
You just got to play it.
Yeah, because none of
just
those guys
wild.
have COVID. They were just deemed high risk because
Yeah,
they
they all
on those guys.
tested negative today too.
Right. And they
So-
still won't let them play.
Yeah,
That's wild.
I guess though, what is it, like 20 players and staff on Baltimore have COVID? I'm not sure what the numbers are for.
a few tested positive on the Steelers too.
Yeah, James Conner has it.
Yeah,
I don't
but
know.
she's
who
a
else.
cancer survivor, so
Right. That's a huge
yeah.
deal. Now, and I wonder if they're trying to bend over backwards because didn't each of them already lose? Wasn't their first game postponed? Or was that the Steelers and
the
someone
Steelers
else?
had another game. They lost their bye week because of the Patriots Broncos
yeah, yeah.
situation early
Yeah.
on. So they had to give up their bye week, or they had to have their bye week basically week 4 instead of whenever it would have
Right.
been because of all that stuff. So yeah, they've kind of gotten screwed by this a couple times. But that's just kind of the NFL decided that they didn't want to leave themselves any extra space for rescheduling.
They didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do a
anything, and
bubble. They didn't want to.
So this is kind of what we're left with.
And you know damn well there's 5 weeks after this week. There's 5 weeks left for the season. They're going to do everything in their power to get this done, and probably also expand the playoffs so they can make more money. You know something like that's happening. You know it's going to happen.
We shall see. Quick predictions, I guess. We're recording before the game, so if this doesn't come out before then, here's what we thought was going to happen. If it does come out before the game, here's what we think is going to happen.
Oh man, I can't see the Packers scoring any less than 24 points, and I don't know how the Bears do that and score their own 24 points unless the D scores and they have. I mean, we saw when Cordell Patterson returned a kick against a terrible Vikings team, that still didn't help. So, I don't know. 24-11 Bears. I mean,
11.
Packers.
I was going to say 20-10 Packers. I
think it'll be pretty low scoring.
I don't think that the change in quarterback's really going to make a difference. I think there's just not good talent on offense.
If nothing else, at least make the game more entertaining.
Right.
Like, at least be fun to watch. Be fun bad at this point. The Bears aren't even fun
Mhm.
bad. They're just bad.
The Bears are just can't watch bad. I mean, that's how bad they are.
So
now.
be fun bad.
27-13 Packers.
Be like,
Fun
Mitch
bad?
scrambles and like there's two guys and he ducks in between them and chucks the ball up and A-Rob comes across the middle and catches it and everyone goes nuts and we have like 10 minutes of feeling good before reality sets in. Like, be that kind of bad.
Fun bad sounds like Sinbad's rejected cousin or something. But I just want the Bears to be not bad.
Right.
And
me
they
too.
are bad.
Yeah,
so
me too.
I don't want any
Real
kind
quick,
of bad. Fun bad.
I have to share this text with you. So intern Mike, he is doing an actual internship with a real company, where he's posting social media for this company. And he posted last night and said, "Who you got tonight, Jake Paul or Nate Robinson?" I got Nate. And some random person responded to him, said, "I'd have you against anyone in a next conference competition."
That's got to be someone he went to school with.
No,
right?
he's like, I've never heard of this person in my life. I know who this person is.
Yikes.
I've never met them before
in
in my
a
life.
neck circumference competition. Mike does have a pretty thick neck.
Intern
man.
Mike getting dumped on.
There you go, Mike. Real quick, we'll touch on this since this happened last week. The Bulls picked Florida State forward Patrick Williams with the number 4 pick in the draft last week. Kind of a surprise pick at 4. Wasn't someone being talked about a lot as going in the top 4, but a lot of versatility and upside, and he kind of fits the bill of where the NBA kind of already is, but is certainly trending towards, which is the positionless player, where he can guard basically every position above average, especially like 1 through 4. He's, I would say, a great defender, and then he could defend to 5 if need be. But he's 19, second youngest guy in the draft. Still a lot of room to grow physically, and obviously
he's an athletic freak.
So
I'm excited about that.
He's someone who he offers something that the Bulls don't really have right now, which is an athletic freak who can play great defense and kind of flash score. So a lot of people were concerned because he wasn't a starter in college, but his
coach said he was a finisher.
Yeah, Leonard Hamilton's quote was great. They just asked why he didn't start, and he said, well, he finished them. So, I mean, that's a good point.
2 weeks from today, Condiments, we'll be talking about Bulls preseason basketball.
Feels good.
It's wild.
Feels good.
I'm excited for it. I think I'm going to watch the entire preseason game.
They also drafted in the second round a European player who is not coming over yet, kind of a stowaway.
Yep.
But a lot of obviously comps to Jokic because of just where he's from and kind of his size and skill set. So I forget it's funny because he has the same name as another former basketball player from Serbia, I think is where he's from. And when you do a Google search of this guy's name, the first player that comes up is a 37-year-old dude. And I was like, what? I'm like, why would they draft a 37-year-old? And then a little more research, you find he's 19.
Didn't we have Jokic or Nurkic, or we traded the pick away that turned into
Nurkic.
One of those? I don't know.
Both of them are really good, so
I'm super excited to be talking Bulls basketball again soon.
Again, we landed at the point we were kind of all we just didn't know much about him at the time of the pick, but we kind of all came to the same agreement that we can't be the guys that complain about the old regime to the point of nausea and then complain about the new regime's first pick. So
exactly.
Gotta let AK do his thing.
It doesn't sound like he's going to be a big contributor right away. Then again, this is a very young team, and I know that they're going to want him to grow, and the best way to grow is to play basketball. So it should be an interesting season. Again, we have talent on the roster.
Definitely.
It just wasn't used correctly. And I'm not saying we're going to be a 3, 4, or 5 seed, but I would assume we'll be in the running for that because of the NBA is doing like a play-in tournament essentially for the playoffs. I'm assuming we'll be in contention for at least the play-in tournament. I
think the Bulls should be, with the talent on the roster and a competent coach in place and just front office, I think the Bulls should be in competition for the 8 seed because the 8 seed is not that hard to attain record-wise in the NBA, in the Eastern.
Who was the 8 seed last year? Do you remember?
I think Orlando.
Okay.
And you
better be able to beat Orlando.
And they were a similar situation to us kind of going into the last seasons where they had like young talent, but they was just kind of like untapped potential. And
yes, you're right. Orlando was the 8 seed at 33-40 last year.
Exactly. So, and you have to look at it from the perspective of the Bulls upgrade at coach it's infinite because Jim Boylan was just completely overmatched, and Billy Donovan has proven that he can get the most out of talent, like what he did in Oklahoma City, especially last year. But I am extremely excited for Bulls basketball this year.
Basically, the fight for the 8 seed looks like so Brooklyn finished at 35-37 as the 7 seed. They're going to move. They're going to move up.
They'll be a top 2 seed, I'm sure, next year.
So it was Milwaukee, Toronto, Boston, Indy, Miami, Philly, Brooklyn, Orlando. So I don't see. Obviously, you'll have Milwaukee, Toronto, Miami, Philly. Probably the top 6 are back in, and now you're going to have Atlanta, who made a bunch of moves. So I'm sure. And then you have Washington and Charlotte ahead of us. So it looks like it'll be a 1, 2, 3, 4 team race for the 8th seed, which is fine, I guess.
So one thing I didn't really think about this until you just mentioned Brooklyn, Jimmy. We haven't seen Kevin Durant play basketball in almost 2 years.
A long time, yeah.
And I am actually, for one, I know he's kind of fragile on social media and stuff, and people, but I love Kevin Durant as
Me
a
too.
basketball player.
Dude, you've been a fan of him since Texas.
Yeah, I cannot wait for him to get back on the court and really give, it's just another team that could give, the Lakers a run for it. And the Lakers, man, they're kicking ass already this offseason. I mean, they've gotten better.
Have they signed AD yet?
They haven't signed. Well, I guess that's a good point. They haven't signed AD, but they did sign Montrezl Harrell, and they traded for Dennis Schroeder. So they literally signed the 6th man of the year and the runner-up for 6th man of the year last year.
And then they brought in Marc Gasol, who I know was older, but very skilled passer, and he's 7'1".
And he'll fit in.
That's right, exactly. He's a very smart player.
Anthony Davis, maybe he's thinking about coming to the Bulls. Maybe you weren't wrong, Jim.
That would. But back to your point about Kevin Durant, that team was good with Kyrie out. I mean, they started peaking at the end. I mean, they started playing some good basketball. So you add Kyrie.
Kyrie.
Yeah. They're gonna be real good.
Yeah.
Especially in the East.
And now James Harden's trying to force a trade out there.
I think that they're gonna jump to the 2 seed. I think they'll go past. Well, they may even be able to beat.
Well,
Milwaukee.
now people are questioning Milwaukee because they tried to trade for Bogdanovich.
Yes.
Best name in the NBA.
And he said no.
He said no.
Yes.
And then he went to the Hawks.
He said no.
And so now people are questioning if Giannis. People are saying Giannis is questioning Milwaukee's ability to attract star power because they couldn't get Bogdanovich. I mean, that's a valid question. You couldn't even get.
Well,
he's a solid player.
To his point, if he doesn't know that Giannis is going to stick there long term, why the hell would he go there? So I understand where Giannis is coming from, but at the same time, if you want to attract star power, sign a 5-year extension. Let those people know, hey, I'm going to be here. Come play with me. No one wants to uproot themselves and move to Milwaukee, Wisconsin without a commitment.
I do think that getting Drew Holiday instead is an upgrade from Eric Bledsoe.
Big time.
I do think that
that was a great trade.
Yeah.
Big time for them.
Yeah, it remains to be seen. I don't see Giannis staying in Milwaukee long term. I
just don't want him to go to LA or the Clippers.
I mean, it's still LA.
The Warriors.
Okay. Yeah, I just
want
to see him come to the Bulls.
Come to the Bulls with Anthony Davis.
Short 90-mile drive south, right?
I mean, Bulls are going to have like $80 million worth of caps. I think they have room to get 2 max stars next year.
Next year, yeah. This year it's tight. But next year is the year. Next year's our year, boys.
Yep.
They're back.
Can't wait.
All right, we'll wrap it up there unless you guys got anything else.
No, sir.
All right, thanks to all of our condiments out there for listening. We love you guys. If you don't already, follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Bros Let's Talk. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere else your podcasts are found. Our podcast lives at anchor.fm/Bros Let's Talk, and our website is brosletstalk.com. For Jimmy and Andy, this is Pat. Later, dudes.
Peace. Hey, boys.